Great conversation that we're about to have, but you could see that in the video by Funbe, all those greenery showing that we have a lot of arable land in Africa for us to exploit, to be able to produce more than enough. But the question that we always have to ask ourselves as individuals, corporate organizations, as farmers, as countries is, do we do more than enough to make sure we're food secure? Well, it's one of the issues that we have to discuss on Farmers' Day, and we know that, of course, 100,000 Ghana cedis will be the money that eventually goes to the top earning farmer in our country. At the end of the day, we have thousands of others who till large acreages of land in smaller holding, spatial household communities that don't just have enough, don't produce enough, don't have access to the other resources when they produce enough. And that's a question we have to talk about. And not too long ago, one of the things we have to discuss is the effect of illegal mining on food security. But there are questions we need to ask. Because after we talked about galamsey, etc., we have also to ask the question, how does this act affect the quality of food on our market? How do we also reclaim the lands left by these illegal miners and ensure that we don't have any food shortages at all? And the lands that we're reclaiming, what would they mean? Are they arable enough for large cultivation? And so Arusha, Ghana, they undertook a small research, but also that gives a certain vivid picture about what really is pertaining post the eviction of galamseyers from those lands. And we have the Deputy Director for Arusha, Ghana in the studio, and Daryl Busu is here. Daniel Busu, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, Roland. How about you too?
Yes, I'm taking keen interest in not only your organization, but the work that you do.
Yeah.
Just tell me a little bit about Arusha, Ghana.
Yes, thank you, Roland. So, Arusha, Ghana is an environmental organization. We've been working since 1999. Our work basically is to contribute to safeguarding our natural assets, which eventually serves as the basis for all the production that we have in the country. And as you know, everything that we do in terms of the food security issues, our water resources that we need to flow in our taps in the morning is all as a result of the interaction that nature gives us. And our work basically is to ensure that the natural resources that leads to the provision of these services, water, food security issues, and also even climate amelioration is secured. So we work with both the natural environment as well as the people whose interaction lead to either positive or negative impact on these environment. Wow. And our work also focuses on protection of particular species, species that are of importance both locally and internationally. So yes, we are very much interested in what's happening to our environment and also to the well-being of the people whose livelihood depend a lot on the health of the environment.
So that prompted you to undertake this research?
Yes, actually we've been working within the eastern region, particularly around the Chebi areas. I would say I can talk about 7 districts surrounding this spectacular forest we call the Atiwa Forest. And we realize that there's been widespread mining activities, basically from galamsey. And as a result, we realize that, okay, when the gold is finished, what next? What do we do to the land that has been turned over severally by some of these mining activities? And we also know that the mining activities brought in its wake the pollution of the rivers and streams. So our idea was, okay, this has happened. We can't do anything about it, but we need to find solutions to that. And so in doing that, we needed to find a way to bring back the productive functions of the land. And as a result, we decided to partner with several other organizations, organizations that have the expertise in terms of restoring degraded areas to productive functions, and also to work with institutions that have capacity in research to try and tell us what do we have to confront with. Because these lands have been turned upside down. We need to understand whether there's sufficient nutrients in the land that can be used for production, whether it's for crops or for whatever purpose. So we set out not with an intention to even come out with the findings that we have found. Rather, how do we improve the land and make it better for productive users? And as a result of the study, the results that were coming out realized that no, we needed to really look at this carefully. So we set out to pick samples of soil and also water using standard soil and water sample collection protocols, because we had discussions with the CSIR so that they could help us on how we should collect the samples, and also in terms of transportation, also the analysis. And what we realized is that for both the soil and water analysis, particularly for the water analysis, we realized that there were quite some levels of heavy metals like mercury and a lot of these pits. So you realize that once they do the mining, when the governments came into power and launched a campaign against galamsey, a lot of these miners pulled out of the sites. And as a result, there were several pits left abandoned in most of these areas. Pits and also flowing streams. You could see polluted water flowing in these various areas. So we went about collecting samples in these pits to understand what is going on in these pits, the streams that are there, what is going on. Because there's already, even at the local level, you hear people talking about, oh, okay, we can make use of these areas. We can even do fish farming in these ponds. We can do a lot of things. And even you heard about the fact that when the government asked these companies to stop action, they started doing some greenwashing activity by leveling the ground, and immediately people went down to the ground to plant crops like cassava. You could even see people planting oil palm and also coconut in these areas. So everybody was like, okay, it's not all lost. We've mined the area, but we can still put the crops back on the land. But this is where we realize that no, it is not as easy as it's said, because there are so many things we need to look at. And when you do mining, you actually take out of the underground soil and bring to the surface some heavy metals, which according to health experts are not very good for our consumption. Heavy metals like mercury, heavy metals like arsenic, heavy metals like lead, and also some levels of aluminum. I mean, some of these heavy metals, they're already naturally occurring in the soil, but to certain levels, they become very toxic. And for plants, there's what we call bioaccumulation. If there's too much of it, the plants eventually take these heavy metals within their system. So you see traces of these heavy metals in the food that we eat. So for as long as you are going to take the food that is coming from these sites that are contaminated, you see that these heavy metals eventually will end up settling within the body. And within the body, they don't perform any physiological functions. They just settle in there and either disrupt the system or cause some havoc. And we all know some of these health hazards of mercury, as has been elaborated by many medical experts and all of that. And so we needed to be cautious. So the studies identified that for the pits that have water in them, there were high levels of some of these mercury, and also the arsenic and the lead in these areas. Wow. Levels that are much, much higher than is recommended by World Health Organization. For consumption.
Or to be in anything edible.
Exactly, anything edible. The same way when we did analysis of the soil, we also realized that, first of all, the very essential minerals, like potassium, like nitrogen, that is needed to support food crop production were all very low. So in other words, if you want to return these lands to very productive uses, you need to, I would say, try and improve the soil quality before you can think of even putting in crops. Then again, after assessing the essential nutrients for crop production, we also decided, okay, let's test what else is in the soil. And then we realized that, like I said, mercury, arsenic, and lead, all of these metals were also in the soil. And not only there, but they were also in much higher levels than you will expect to be in these areas. Now, for all mining areas, you expect this to be the case. But our concern came out when we realized that people are returning to these areas with the intention that they're going to just put crops there. And the idea is that, for what has been found out through research, areas like these, it takes sometimes about a minimum of about 10 years for some of these minerals to actually break down, not completely, but to much more levels that are not harmful. Okay, but if we are still returning immediately to these areas with the intention to put food crops, then definitely we are in for trouble.
Your findings, have you been able to closely work with the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources to be able to put all this into perspective? Because I know there's an intention for a proper reclamation program to be undertaken.
Yes, so the research, we started it last year, 2016. The results started coming in this year, April, and then we started also talking to, because it's also at this localized area of the eastern region, around the Chebi areas and some of the 7 districts I'm talking about. We have already had extensive discussion with a lot of the key actors in these areas. That's the Ministry of Agriculture. We also had sufficient interaction with the EPA and also with the Water Resources Commission. Some of them who have also confirmed that these results are turning out to be very common, where you see high levels of some of these chemicals, both in water and also in the soil. So I think that, yes, the meeting we had just not too long ago in Chebi was a validation and also to bring out the results to most people. So actually, the ministry were invited to be part of this session. And also for a long time, we have been working with the ministry to try and get some of these results out. So I know, like you said, they're also doing the MMIP project, and there are still discussions as to how to roll it out. We know of a pilot. They have started even in the Chebi East Aki Municipal Assembly, and we are very much aware of. So our work, which started in 2016, is more or less also in line with the government's intention. So definitely, these issues are going to come up, and already, like I said, it's come up. They have shown interest, and we are actually looking forward to how we work together on this. Because, like I said, you see, the ministry's intention is not to retain these areas to agricultural production right away. Their intention is also to reclaim the land and do some activities that would also ensure that the land becomes very productive in the long term. And what we actually want to recommend is not to immediately look at crops now, but maybe within the period, just focus on trees. Trees that will eventually pick out these heavy metals, and then we can translate them into things like furniture, tables, and
elsewhere
other
around the world, is that the practice? Have we had, for example, large acreages of land, like what we find pervasive in our country, that have been reclaimed over a period and so have been made or put to good use? Yes,
yes. I think this is, I would say that the practice is much more common with very large mining companies. You know, this galamsey thing, you don't find it all over the world. It's only in certain areas of sub-Saharan Africa.
So you're saying that because it's unregulated, it puts the whole reclamation process into some perspective.
Exactly. And if you want to see areas where there's been very good reclamation practices, it's basically by these big mining companies. And already for these big mining companies, they don't go directly into putting food crops on the land. They actually do leveling, they do soil enrichment, and also put in place certain crops that eventually are able to remove the heavy metals. And there is regular and consistent soil testing to monitor whether these levels have gone down or they are still up, and that would then advise them on what next to do. So it all depends on you managing the levels of the heavy metals. If you continue and for 10 years the heavy metals are still there, you still need to continue with practices to ensure that you reduce the levels of these heavy metals.
But curiously, galamsey has always been with us.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, we may have been farming on lands that perhaps have not been well tested.
Yeah.
In terms of their soil, the texture, the content, etc. And so we may have eaten foods over the years like that. It's only that this one is on a larger scale, so it's been brought to mind for us to focus on.
Roland, I think that is where we are very worried. You know, these things have been happening for a long time, and I know that some of our regulatory agencies, they know what is happening.
They do?
I'm sure, of course. I mean, they are experts. They know that if you mine areas and you go planting crops right after that, there are certain implications that we are likely going to suffer from. And I would have expected that knowing these things, I mean, we would have actually taken initiative to, from time to time, test some of these areas. You get it? So we need to be concerned because it has to do with food quality, it has to do with water quality issues. And if results show, and I mean, ours is not the first. I've also heard about, I've even seen a press release where an organization like Wacom publishes a paper indicating that please be careful of crops coming from this particular location because they suspect that some heavy metals contamination is ongoing in these areas. You get it? So, I mean, when these things come out, we expect that some of these agencies will just get to the ground and find out. Okay. And even when this information come out to some of these agencies, EPA and all of these things, I think that they can also, I mean, pick up on it, verify, validate, because we all need some assurances. And once you know that your food is not safe, I mean, sometimes we don't think about it, but within 10 years, 15 years, and we see high levels, some diseases coming to the hospitals like kidney failure and all of these things, they're all related to some of these heavy metals.
Well, we've been told that many of these people or young men who are engaged in illegal mining had been suffering over time.
Yes.
Some of these
Yes.
difficulties.
Yeah. Because they have had direct exposure to these metals.
And there was this research undertaken by some professors at the University of Cape Coast, and this was brought to light as well. Okay. But at the end of the day, it means that the farmers themselves also could be in danger. If let's say you are tilling land that has, over time, you have great exposure to.
You know, for some of these heavy metals, if you don't have it directly in your face, like, because some of them are volatile, some of them also you get in contact through touching them directly, you are not likely to get exposed.
Well, the farmers touch the soil.
Yeah, there's farmers touch the soil, but at this level, it's really in the land. You get it. Maybe
so it is the consistency, perhaps.
Exactly, and how long you're in the land. And once they go in and put it in the ground, they put in their vegetative planting materials in the ground, you see that the plant then start absorbing it. So we need to be concerned rather about the food that is being, where the heavy metals are accumulating. So the cassava, if you're doing coconut now, you expect that the coconut fruit sometime will have this in there. If you're doing oil palm, some plants actually take up these heavy metals, and once they take it up, you find traces in your food. So maybe we need some assurances. We need the agencies to really get to the ground. Test some of these food coming from these. I hear even already in places like Chebi, I'm talking about just now, because all these potential farm areas were turned to mine site. Food has become very expensive, and they have to source food from. It's the situation in most of these mining areas, not only Chebi. So basically, it's really an issue that we should all be concerned about.
Well, so at the end of the day, we know that we have to consistently do some form of education.
Yeah.
From which angles should it be coming from? Is it with NGOs or let's say think tanks like yours? Or do we also need to collaborate with government for this kind of sensitization or awareness to be drilled down the ground?
Yes, I think that's a very good question. And I think that what needs to be done, like you said, is that we need to work with some of these municipal assemblies. I believe in the decentralized process because this is where things happen. So talking to the various departments, with the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of the EPA, the Ministry of Agriculture, they are even giving extension to some of these people. So yes, we need to definitely get the information on the ground, and that is why when we got these findings, we decided to engage with some of these people at the various district assemblies and convey the information, and all of us to plan how to really disseminate the information. So we're actually going to do some local radio discussions on this issue with key persons like the Ministry of Agriculture.
And I know as an organization, you have some compilations of some audio visuals too. What basically were they about?
Yes, basically we try to capture the degraded areas and also to see what activities are going on in terms of the farming activities, the coconut.
So for example, if you watch the screen, this will be what?
So this is a site, this is an abandoned mine site where farmers have gone to plant cassava. This is cassava, you can see. And it's very common in most of these areas. Some of the people we talk to are really surprised that they cannot even plant cassava. They don't understand why. They actually had the impression that they can sell out their land and right after level it and do other crops, which is a very dangerous understanding of how mining areas can be used. You get it? So, and this is what we find. What you can see in the shot over there is coconut. A mining company actually in an attempt to show that they're reclaiming the land, actually started planting coconut in some of it. They actually did maize and coconut, but the maize failed.
So you had experts with you who did the toxicology?
Yes. Actually, we collected the soil samples and analysis were done by the Soil Research Institute of the CSIR. They help out with all of these analysis. So basically, the analysis part is all done by the
right
soil.
Experts,
yes, exactly.
The Soil Research Institute of the CSIR.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, the farmers are the first people who get to the land usually.
Yeah. What
role can the district assemblies play, or perhaps the municipal assemblies? Because at the end of the period of mining, when there's the eventual eviction and the illegal miners have gone away, the land is left fallow and bare, and so there's that free period of understanding that you can go there and do the mining. Who need to be the first duty bearer institution to talk to, or perhaps go in and say, please, guys, let's have a break and make sure that we do the right things.
Exactly. I think that's also a very good one. And I will say that the best institution to lead this process is the district assemblies or the municipal assemblies.
In areas where you did the research,
yes,
have they been doing something?
Exactly. We've had discussions with the district assemblies. I would say most of these assembly persons, they know about the issues. We convey this information to them. And also, I will say that the Ministry of Agriculture in all of these districts, the department heads, they should be very, open to this information and engage with the farmer associations. But for all of these districts, they have farmer associations. You could have women in farming, cocoa farmers, and all of these. They need to organize a special meeting with them and tell them, look, we know you have an intention to go back to some of these degraded areas and farm. But for the meantime, due to this and these issues, we'll ask you to wait until the right processes are in place. But we need to restore the land, first of all, to ensure there's sufficient nutrients that can give us productive food production, and also ensure that the food that is produced is of very good quality and wholesome for human consumption.
Per your assessment as Arisha Ghana,
yeah.
Do you envisage any sort of shortages beyond the presence of those mining areas?
In terms of food, yes, definitely. I think already we have that happening.
No, within those areas.
Within those
areas,
do you
expect
yes,
it beyond those
yes,
areas?
Yes. Well,
are we talking about large acreages for which they could account for some food insecurity or shortages?
Actually, for all the mining areas that were affected by mining, we should expect some sort of shortage because, these were productive lands that were actually converted. You also heard about cocoa farms being brought down to, and I'm sure these issues about cocoa production level as a country going down has quite a relation to all the large-scale galamsey that we found all around, because cocoa farms were converted, and food crops like places for cocoyam and all those food crops were now not available. They were all converted to, once your farmland is close to a river and not far from a river, and the people have seen some alluvial gold in there, they will clear your land to have it. So definitely, for all the mining areas, we actually anticipate, and it's actually the case right now, people are really struggling to get food, and it's also very expensive. Food is very expensive in those areas. Okay. Yeah.
But if we have to perhaps get on to the next level of making sure that these lands are cleared, how do we start it? Do we then go and sack these farmers and say that we're leaving these lands bare for them to perhaps do some restoration themselves?
Yeah, the whole process of restoring the land to its productive use needs to be managed, and it shouldn't just be left to ad hoc practices and actions. Like you said, I'm very happy about the MMIP by the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. It's very good, but I think that other organizations should also join the fight. Of course, we sat down and we got to this level. Now we have a problem at hand, we need to find a solution. And the best way to do that is that, first of all, the whole process needs to be managed. And getting down to the ground, the lands don't have to be left as they are now. We need to level the grounds, because that's what they used to be before. Level the land and try to somehow stabilize the land area as it is. And we can do that by several cover crops, which also eventually retain some nitrogen nutrients into the ground, which is very crucial for any food production. And then and we foresee that that can be done within a period of about 1 to 2 years. Level the ground and then ensure the production of, say, cover crops in these areas. And when these cover crops are established, we need to plow these cover crops back into the land as a way of improving the texture, because we have lost so much organic matter in the soil. You can't do food production without organic matter, which provides all the necessary nutrients. So we need to plow back these cover crops into the land, and then right after, put in some nitrogen fixing, I would say, tree species. There could be shrubs, there could be trees, which would then put back some very crucial, essential nutrients back into the soil. Now, let's not forget that there will still be some of these heavy metals. The only way we can take care of these heavy metals is to then bring in the trees. So these degraded areas are an unfortunate situation, but it also creates an opportunity for, I would say, a restoration program where we can establish some very good forestry practices that we can produce lumber and timber for furniture works and all of that. And we can use 1 to 5 years, stabilizing and improving the land, and then planting some of the tree crops to take out some of the heavy metals. And then maybe in 10 years going, we can then look at, after testing, regular testing, establishing that levels have gone down, we can then look at introducing some of these food crops. But for now, it is not a good idea to put food crops right on these lands even after leveling. We need to tread cautiously. Yeah.
Then there will need to be some institutional support by way of funding, etc., in trying to do the restoration.
Yeah.
What can agencies like yours do, because you have first-hand information, and how can you complement the role of the ministry and the various sub-regional agencies?
Yes, I think we are very much committed to the process as well. We are fundraising with several of our partners. Some of them are in country, some of them also are not in the country. So we are fundraising, and like I said, we started this whole feasibility and also put opportunities. We started looking at it as far back as 2016 because we were really keen to, restore the land to its productive function. So already we are committed to the process, and interestingly, we were very happy when the government also launched the MMIP. They are also trying to find the full complement of funding to get this program rolling. We know the challenge, but I'll say that I'm happy they're taking this issue on board. We're also going to work because for some of these areas that we are talking about, we're already trying to source funding to see how best we can contribute to the process. So we will not be dependent on resources from the MMIP because we are going to find our own resources, and that's why already we have identified a public-private partnership with companies who already have some forest establishment expertise will be very, very useful. And working with, doing all of this within a business case scenario is the best way to go. We shouldn't just plan to go and plant without getting any benefit out of it. We should plan to go and plant with a business case so that we can make money out of the planning process. But if you just go in and make it look like it's gratis, take money, go and plant 100 trees here, and then just walk away. Whether they survive or not is nobody's business. And even to manage them, you need some other money.
So there should be some...
It needs to be... exactly. There needs to be some business. It should be seen as a business, doing planting and with a plan that in the future, you cut the trees, sell it.
So almost like just making sure there's some return on the investment.
Exactly. It's crucial. Without that, I don't think we can succeed with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then on the wider scope,
yeah,
then it means that in some of the areas, because mining is not only taking place in some of the areas where we've seen the tax force, etc. go there, even in northern Ghana, parts of northern Ghana, we've had mining activities ongoing there. Yeah. That's dangerous, even for their water access points, etc. How far are we making sure that what you're doing is, and the findings you find there, is you share it across country?
Yes, I think we have partnership with several organizations working across the whole country. We also have a presence in the northern part of the country. But I also need to say that we know that the kind of mining that they are doing in the northern part, it's more like a bit underground. They do a bit of the shallow surface mining, but they dig really underground and go to get this. And also the issue is also not directly in the rivers and streams. The land is already very hard. So it's a matter of maximizing and ensuring that whatever people are doing on the ground is sustainable in terms of returns, is worth it. That's it. So we are going to share this information across board, and we are using our networks also in the northern region. With the institution that we work with, we know all of them are going to get. And there are some regional level institutions like WABEC and even other institutions that have shown interest in what is happening. They are also willing to commit to this process. So we think that by our very establishment and network, we can easily get information flowing, and that's what we are going to do. And we also, through support from the media, we intend to get this really across to all the parts where this information is very useful.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for passing through the studio this morning. We've had in the studio the Deputy Director for Arusha, Ghana, Dario Bosu, talking to us about research finding and what really they found out. And this one is pertaining to the mining areas, or perhaps the areas which had witnessed some galamsey activities. And so post the galamsey eviction process or period, what do we do with the land? Because immediately their findings have indicated we've had individuals and farm groups tend to go there and strictly do some household farming activities. But ultimately it has some effect on health as well as in the long term on the lands themselves. But where can people reach you, just in case, let's say your website, for example?
Yes, so we have a website. If you just go log on to www.arusha.org, or you also log on to www.arusha.org. I think you locate us. Yes.
Have you published the research there, or you're now
Yes,
in the
I think yes, we'll publish it very But so far the early results of the soil analysis and what has been shared with EPA, regional EPA officers, and also the local officers. Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Darryl.
Thank you also very much.
It's just a Farmers Day edition of the AM show. We've been having some great discussions on agriculture with different perspectives as to how we can have great conversations around improving the soil that we have, but more so creating a lot more opportunities for farmers to do what they have to do and what they do best. But we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll have great conversations still on the AM show. To say